Democrat Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey triples the migrant budget, the illegal immigrant budget, but hides past spending. How much have you spent? About $1 billion. What'd you spend it on? Not really going to tell you. Let's get into it. Here we go. Let's bring you up to speed on just a couple of events that happened that kind of exemplify what we're going to talk about. Here is the governor of Massachusetts talking about declaring a state of emergency because too many illegals came into her state because she virtue signaled and told them to. Huh. Yeah. Weird, right? Here we go.
Yeah, today I declared an emergency, and it's important for people to understand what's been happening in our state. We are dealing with a humanitarian.
I'm going to jump in. I don't normally do this on videos, but she's wanting to declare an emergency. We've had an emergency at the southern border the entire time of the current administration. It's been an emergency. It's been an emergency. And now, because Greg Abbott has done the Lord's work and brought the illegals to cities that they want to go to, one of them being Boston in Massachusetts, she is all of a sudden, we're overwhelmed. It's an emergency. Well, maybe you shouldn't have told everybody to come to your state and your cities because you basically virtue signaled that you're a sanctuary state. And then all of a sudden you're doing a reverse course because you got an emergency on your hands. Hey, how about that southern border? That's all you got to say. And if you want to elect Kamala Harris, the border czar, she's been on board as vice president the last 3.5 years. What do you think she's going to do at the southern border? Yeah.
Humanitarian crisis. We're seeing it here in Massachusetts. We're seeing it across the country. There are so many migrants arriving into our states on a daily basis. And for a state like ours, where there have been tremendous supports and resources as a general matter for housing, our shelter system, our housing system is really incredibly strained. And so it's reached a point where I needed to declare an emergency here in Massachusetts.
That's so annoying. It's incredibly strained because you placed all of the strains on it by welcoming and virtue signaling to folks around the world. Come to Boston, come to Massachusetts. And then when they did, you're like, oh, good Lord, what are we going to do with all these people? These people are expensive. We got to feed them. We got to medical care. They're having babies. Weird. People are having babies. I mean, you've got housing, you've got all that crap, right? Here's another great example. Remember when, I don't know if you remember this, but we podcasted on this. They closed a recreation center to the constituents of that area, to the residents of that area. They closed a rec center for kids, swimming pool and all that to house migrants because they had their housing was so bad. There were people sleeping at the airport. Logan Airport was just inundated with illegals. Here we go.
Concerns to the governor about a potential plan to house migrants at the Milnea Cass Recreational Complex in Roxbury. That facility is owned by the state. Right now, migrants are sleeping on the floor in Terminal E at Logan Airport with a state shelter system full. Governor Maura Healey becoming emotional tonight, talking about the effort to help while also maintaining community services for people in Boston.
That's a federal airport. State is housing illegals in a federal airport. Yeah.
I get emotional, guys, okay? Because I'm committed to this. Little kids need to be able to breathe clean air. They need to be able to access swimming pools. They need to have lifeguards there who are going to teach them how to swim. And they need to have activities. I don't know what we're going to do for a couple, 3 months. I'll call universities. I'll call other places.
No, you won't.
The governor went on to say she is also looking at other locations, but has not said exactly where. Earlier this week, Governor Healey renewed her call for federal assistance to house migrants.
All of these Democrat leadership, governors, mayors have also, we need federal assistance. It's because you virtue signaled, and if you build it, they will come. And they came. They came, and Greg Abbott just boom, bust, boom, bust, boom, bust. Now we're hearing reports of, 25,000 people, illegals coming to Chicago during the Democratic National Convention. I don't think that'll happen. But boy, even if we saw 5,000 come, that would be some excitement. Democratic Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey has tripled the budget the Bay State is spending on its migrant shelters, but is stonewalling requests for an accounting of how she has spent the previous $1 billion on migrant housing. Yeah, that sounds about right, doesn't it? One case, for instance, finds that the state shelled out $16.3 million to rent out a Boston hotel to house illegals. However, after being asked where the money went, the state did not reveal to whom that multi-million-dollar payment was made. Who'd you pay? Who was running the show here? No comment. This contract is not the only one with details blacked out after the paper filed the Freedom of Information Act. The secrecy is extreme, even in Massachusetts, a state with a poor track record of providing governmental records for public scrutiny. Governor Maura Healey's administration has broken with government accountability norms by withholding key information about some contractors and has shuttered the shelters from public view, even as the state tripled its spending on migrant and homeless family services. Without transparency, it's difficult, if not impossible, for the watchdogs to ensure that taxpayer money isn't wasted and to verify that vulnerable families are safely housed and getting appropriate care. You know what's crazy is that she literally sent a delegation down to Texas to tell the folks on the southern border, hey, you know what? Boston's pretty tapped out. We're up to here in illegals because we virtue signaled. And believe it or not, a lot have been sent to Boston because that's where they wanted to go. They heard that we have all kinds of resources for them and they came. We don't know what to do. We're tapped out. We're taking over rec centers. We're sleeping them at the airport. Got all kinds of craziness going on. And this was par for the course with all of these governors. They all virtue signaled. They all wanted in on the action until they looked at their budget and went, good Lord, this is costing us a lot. All right, send Jimmy, Susie, Amy, and Freddie down to the border and tell them no mas in Boston. No mas. Just don't send any more. We can't handle you. We're overwhelmed. You're Chicago mayor. Send us federal money. We're tapped out. The paper added screenshots of some of the Freedom of Information Act pages showing that entire pages of information have been blacked out, keeping the information away from prying eyes of the people of the state. How is that even legal? You just black stuff out? Oh yeah, no, you can't. We can't have you knowing that. It's top secret. Paying for illegals with taxpayer money is top secret. Housing them? Okay. All right. Well, whatever. State officials, though, claim that the secrecy is necessary to safeguard the privacy of the more than 7,000 families of illegals. We're not naming their names. We just want to know where's the money. Show me the money, right? That are being given millions in free government support courtesy of the Massachusetts taxpayers. So Healey's spokesperson, Carissa Hand, it's an interesting name. She said, well, hate groups have repeatedly located shelters and used this information to threaten, intimidate, and terrorize shelter residents and staff. Or, in other words, they asked some questions. Oh, yeah, we don't want to get into that. No, sirree. We do not want to get into that. It's kind of like California spent $24 billion over the last 5 years since 2019 on the homelessness issue, on eradicating homelessness. $24 billion, and they don't really know where the money went. Just not really sure accountability wise. Got so many programs out there. There's there's no transparency. We don't really know. And homelessness just went up. I mean, it went up. It didn't slow down. It wasn't, impacted the way that you would hope after $24 billion is spent, because most efforts at just sweeping homeless encampments don't work because the people don't go away. We've talked about that a million times. So Expenditures are mounting for migrants in other areas in the Bay State as well. In July, State Senator Michael Moore, Democrat, and Republican Minority Leader Bruce Tarr sent a letter to the Healey administration warning that the state's been paying expenses even for migrants whom private citizens have sponsored under the federal humanitarian parole program. That's the parole program where they just release them into the wild. Good luck out there. I mean, we know you don't have a work visa and we know you're not a resident. You don't have any real, right to be here, but we're going to parole you based on the fact that you've signed a piece of paper that says you may or may not show up to a court hearing on your immigration status in 2029, maybe 2030. We're not really sure. But hey, be there at that hearing because you're on parole. And that's the system where, it was set up to do things like to parole people into the United States. Say you've got the war in Ukraine. You got a whole bunch of refugees coming here because their homes got bombed. Literally they're coming here out of political refugee status, and you parole them into the United States based on the fact, where else are they going to go? So we've done that. The United States has done that to millions and millions of people over the last 3.5 years because that gets people into the country and then they're here. And then this whole notion of them actually showing up for a court hearing. Yeah. Radio. 2 thumbs up on that. In the absence of any action from the United States government to support communities providing housing, food, and support to migrant families during the recent immigration crisis, Massachusetts taxpayers have been footing the bill. It's plainly unfair that taxpayers are supporting individuals who are here under a program that requires, under penalty of perjury, a specific person or organization commit to financially support them. That's the whole parole deal. They're supposed to be under somebody who's footing the bill, but the state is. That's what they're saying. Federal government is. Who knows who's footing the bill, right? Because there's no real accountability. And then when you've got these freedom of information acts, it's just incredible. Okay, the Globe noted that shelter operators in the Bay State have also called police, get this, up to 600 times to report serious incidents of crime inside the state's migrant shelters since January 2023. January 2023, not even 2 years, 600 times. It's like Rikers Island right now in New York City is just getting rocked with one incident of violence after the shootings, rapes, murder, you name it. It's got it going on. Because you got to, 3, 4, 5,000 illegals in a small concentrated area. They don't have the ability to work. Well, not legally anyway. They're just all hanging out, waiting for work authorization, waiting to hear, on their immigration status, waiting to hear. And they tend to get into some shenanigans. People get bored and, they came here from a violent country. We just got to keep that roll going. So, that's literally what you've got going on. In many cases, fire and medical services were also dispatched to the shelters, yet the state does not release any records covering the multitude of calls for a police presence in the shelters and has redacted most of the records of the calls made to a safety hotline operated by state offices. Okay. So no go on the money. Don't really know where it's going. Don't really know who it's going to. The additional first responder services that are required at these migrant shelters. Yeah, we're going to keep that on the down low as well. Just don't say anything. Maybe this will just blow over. Meanwhile, she's sending delegates from Massachusetts to the southern border to state. Here's that story. How political leaders decided to take over a Roxbury Recreation Center to shelter migrants. They closed it down. Poor kids. Blue State Governor takes border messaging into her own hands. This is a good one. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey sent a handful of state officials to Texas this week to tell migrants not, I repeat, not to travel to her state to seek refuge. Wait a minute. Which one is it? Because One minute you're crying about this humanitarian crisis where your people aren't getting the facility because the migrants have taken it over, which you gave to the migrants. And you're crying about people in the airport, and you're crying about needing federal money. And then all of a sudden you're virtue signaling. Oh yeah, you're not virtue signaling. You are telling the world, no more. We're done. Massachusetts out. We're tapped out. Well, how do you think the southern states feel after all these years? How do you think they feel? This narrative is only turned because Greg Abbott and to some extent Ron DeSantis in Florida have shipped these illegals to where they want to go. Massachusetts is top of the list because they're handing out the most resources. So you created this pull, and now you're pushing back saying, oh, we can't have these people here. We don't have the resources. Less than a month after President Joe Biden shut down much of the southern border through executive action, he really didn't do that. One Democratic governor is dispatching deputies to border communities to urgent migrants already in the country to urge migrants already in the country, do not come to Massachusetts. Which one is it? Come or no? Come? No. Which one is it? Pick one, because you can't have it both ways. Yeah, you're going to go with the virtue signaling, or you're going to go with falling on your knees going, we need more money because we already spent $1 billion. And no, I'm not going to tell you where I spent it because then we might look bad. Governor Maura Healey sent 5 state officials to Texas earlier this week to tell border protection officials and non-governmental organizations that her state's overburdened emergency shelter system cannot serve any more families. So, yeah, there's that. So this is so standard. It's so typical. They want to get on board with the whole notion of we're a sanctuary city. Please send us all of the illegals you can, because then we can virtue signal that we're a sanctuary city until they realize and they recognize how much money it's going to cost and the ongoing, these are people. These are not, they're not physical things that you can kind of just warehouse. You know what I mean? They're not. A lot of expenses associated with human beings. I don't know if you know this. They tend to eat. They want to drink. They basically need a roof over their head. They need some shelter. They got medical needs. They need to work. They need money. A lot of stuff goes into this. And these, Democrat-run cities and states have just gone down this road. And now there's accountability questions of where all the money has gone. And the answer is, I don't really know. Not really sure. They spent it, but we don't really know. This is par for the course, right? This is just par for the course. And you watch it happen. And all of these officials that are virtue signaling now, we're great, but we don't have any more room in our system. They created their own, nightmare, and they're having to live it. And it's one more example of social experiments gone wrong. Okay, so you're going to have thousands of people come into your state. You don't really have the housing to support them. You don't really have the funding to support them, but you're going to encourage them to come to your state anyway. And then you're going to switch course when the social experiment hasn't worked out. Okay. Yeah. Sounds like a lot of other policies that have come out of these states and these cities, right? Yeah. Interesting how that works, right? All right. That's it for me. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next episode because guaranteed we're going to have more on this kind of stuff because all of these illegals that are in the system, they're not disappearing. They're not going away. Somebody's got to pay for them. Yeah. All right. Thanks again for being here. We'll catch up in the next one. Bye for now.